The pandemic didn't just change existing small businesses, it created a whole generation of new ones. Hi everyone, this is Maheen, and today we have gathered for a roundtable discussion. Meet the COVID class. They were built not despite of, but because of the pandemic, and many build their foundation in times of tremendous change. As a result, they are more agile and tech savvy than any generation before. But capturing the hearts and minds of this innovative group of small business owners will require a new game plan from big brands. Please welcome Mickey from Cargo, Sarah Hurst, Senior Director, Client Development from SAP Concur, David Marantz, Chief Revenue Officer at MedNow, and John Drucker, Product Marketing Manager from OVH Cloud Canada. This roundtable will dig deep into what are the distinguishing mindsets, behaviors, and tendencies of the COVID class, and how do their business models and philosophies differ from the generations before? Has everything we thought we knew about SMEs being flipped upside down? What does the future hold for the COVID class? Are they a temporary blip as a reaction to the pandemic, or a truly here to stay small business owner mindset? Not only is their purpose behind being the small business owners different, but their business models are innovative. How should big brands pivot their sales and marketing strategies to attract and engage this powerful new group of SMEs? Let's get right into it and find out.
I'd love to get just a little bit of an intro from everybody, who you are, organization you come from, and maybe your sort of love for small businesses and exactly what your organizations do regarding that from that perspective. So, and Sarah, if I can start with you, that would be great.
Sure. My name is Sarah Hurst. I've been with SAP Concur for over 8 years, and I support our SMB Canadian client base as the Senior Director. And we support organizations with their organizational spend. So everything from travel expense and AP invoices are supported with our cloud solution.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. Wonderful. John.
Yes, I'm with OVH Cloud. We are a global hyperscaler. We compete with AWS and Google Cloud and Azure. And I am I'm the product marketing director for our location in the Americas. And what we do with regards to, I guess, small business, small medium, is give them the infrastructure and the platform on which to build their digital presence.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Thank you. And just remind me, OVH is originally a French company, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, fabulous. Great. And Dave.
Yeah, great to be here. So David Marantz, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of MedNow. We're a virtual care and virtual pharmacy platform that works with businesses to reduce their drug costs and help their employees live healthier, happier lives.
Okay, great. Well, we got a really nice representation from 3 different industries. And by the way, we're supposed to have more people, and I think it is Friday afternoon, so maybe people try to bail to hit the happy hour very soon. So I promise we'll be pretty brief. It's going to be a great session, but definitely don't want to keep you too long. So that's great. And from my perspective, my name is Mickey Velimirovich, and I'm president of Cargo. Cargo is an advertising and marketing agency that helps big brands market to small businesses. So essentially helping companies like yours, making sure that the engagement and creating that connection to small business owners is there. So we work with companies like Lenovo, Mercedes-Benz, Royal Bank of Canada, and even recently acquired Skipped Edition. So really always focused on that aspect of small business owners. So not sure how many of you have ever been a part of a roundtable, but roundtables it's not a monologue. It's not my presentation to you. It is a conversation. It is a conversation about various topics. In this case, it is talking about this new generation of small business owners, but we can certainly go much, much broader, much deeper, whatever you guys want to sort of touch on, we can certainly do that. It isn't, I don't pick on anybody to speak, but please do obviously ask a lot of questions. There's not a wrong answer. I've been in a lot of roundtables where I've said some really silly things and thought they would be sort of like, I don't think you need to be part of this conversation and get out. And it's been great. So that's what I want this to be. There's no time limit. We can certainly end by time that we're allotted. If not, we can want to go longer. That's perfectly fine. So it is all about having that conversation regarding this particular topic. So hope that makes sense. Are any questions before we sort of kick it off? Nope. All right. Perfect. So the one thing that I think would be really helpful to start this conversation. So being experts in business, and we call the field that we're in business to small business marketing. But being experts in that, we always talk to a lot of small business owners to really try to understand where are they at, how are they feeling. We believe in mindsets. We believe that mindsets define how small and medium-sized business owners buy, no matter what they're buying, whether it's software, whether it's hardware, whether it's a commercial vehicle, whether it's professional services. The mindset really defines exactly where they are and how do they consume all the media and actually run through the buyer journey. So earlier this year, we thought, well, with so many changes, where exactly are they? How are they feeling about the future? And so what we did is we talked to over 1,000 small business owners across Canada in a study that we call State of SMB. And that we multiplied with the fact that we run a panel of 30 small business owners, which is essentially like this. We sit on the screen and then we talk. We ask questions specifically about certain elements. And so we've done this study in sort of wider ways on financial services, technology, hardware, software, telecommunications, logistics, transportation, commercial vehicles. So a lot of different verticals, let's say. So before I get into the sort of our discussion, I would love to just run through, and I've summarized this study. It's a very lengthy one, but I just have a few slides I would just love to share with you guys. So it'll give you a little bit of a sense of where all of this is coming from, where we're going to start talking about the COVID class. So a lot of it is a little bit of a background, but I think it'll give you a very good sense. And I'm just going to run through this fairly quickly. If there's questions you guys have on something you see, please by all means interrupt me and we can get into the conversation right away. Okay. Does everybody see the screen, the full screen? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So as mentioned, we talked to, and was exactly 1,010 small business owners and decision makers across Canada. And what we did is we wanted to make sure we had a really good representation. So we talked to business owners, various ages, various genders. We wanted to make sure we have a good representation of male and female, size of the business, age of the business, quite important, and of course the industry type of the business, to really kind of get that sense of sort of where they are and where they're going next. And one of the things that really shocked us, and this is even for us that have been in this business for a long time, is that 49% of them said we were not negatively impacted by COVID-19. So essentially the response, and we've seen, if we simply followed major media, mainstream media, we would think that this number would be significantly lower, that everybody was negatively impacted, when in reality, almost 50% were not. Now, what's even more interesting is that 45% said they were optimistic about the future, and only 29% said they were pessimistic. 33% said they were doing better post the shutdown. So what was interesting here is that we start to think about, is this because there was this wave of businesses that were already starting to sort of pivot, and that's been kind of a pretty strong word. And if there's any background noise, I apologize. The team, we get some people that are coming from our US office, and it's Friday afternoon at an advertising agency, so you can imagine a little bit loud. But anyway, so when we started to delve deeper into it, we saw there was this, what we call the COVID in effect, meaning that not everybody was really impacted in the same way. And we talked about the 49%. We also saw that larger SMBs, for example, and these are with 10 plus employees, 53% felt no negative impact, and 39% said they were doing better since COVID-19 arrived. And then when we looked at younger SMBs, 63% of SMBs open for less than a year said that they were not negatively impacted. And that's a really, really important number to remember as we get into the discussion about the COVID class and who they are. Now, the one thing that was really, really clear is that majority of them did say that I need to change my business. I don't know what I need to do, but I do need to change it because the way that my customer is buying today is completely changing. So only 16% said that they're not considering any pivots, whereas 36% that they're considering complete business reinvention. So in other words, I'm doing something today, and what I'm going to be doing tomorrow is going to be completely different. But this is where the opportunity for all of us as big brands helping these small businesses is that 73% of those reinventing need help. So in other words, they're really not sure. They know they have to change. They're not really sure what they need to do. So as an example, 21% are considering product digitization, and 82% of those need help Work from anywhere. I mean, this is a trend that a lot of these organizations have never seen, and 34% are considering making this permanent, and 60% almost need help doing that. Online shift, so going away from brick and mortar only to really start to embrace e-commerce, 34% are considering, and 82% of them need help. Going global, that's another big trend that we saw was let's not rely on a single revenue channel. In other words, let's see whether we can become not only a small business that's local, we are still a small business, but we're no longer local. So a Toronto business that used to be on Main Street can now, through e-commerce channels, start selling to a business in Vancouver or a business in Buenos Aires, as an example. Mobilizing their SMB. We saw a lot of this. I mean, mobilizing their business. How do I take this on the road? I don't believe in the brick and mortar store anymore. I think I can bring my business to my consumers, and 23% of them are considering mobilizing. Touchless, obviously, everybody wants to get away from it. So it's all about, high touch environments. Everybody wants to get away and get touchless. 28% are considering this, and 75% of those need help. So very quickly, we also dug into the digital transformation goals. What do you want to do? And all of this will start to make sense in a second when we start to really lean on where COVID class has really pushed. And that is number one, and this is across the board, was improving their social media presence. And that is, a lot of small business owners are now understanding that social media is not just about posting pictures of your family or even your business. It's about creating an environment and creating a marketplace. A lot of organizations are buying and selling on platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, etc. So that becomes their number one goal. Number two is refining e-commerce experience. So again, really starting to get away from just brick and mortar. Number three is adoption of digital solutions across the board. We are talking about anything from systems. I mean, Sarah, in your case, SAP Concur, how they're treating a lot of their processes, to really even moving everything essentially to the cloud. So really getting away from that old antiquated ways, which, by the way, a lot of small business owners unfortunately still run with paper receipts in baskets. And so that is one of the goals as well. And then number four is saying, if I do go digital and I do give up my data, I want to be able to get something out of the data. So this is quite interesting, and this we could use the data to actually help them make smarter business decisions. But when we asked them about why aren't you doing any of this, the four things really came to light, and that is and kind of almost equally split. 27% said the learning curve is going to be far too steep. I have no idea how I'm going to be able to handle all this digital stuff, especially when we start talking about cloud technology. They're really confused in exactly where they need to go. 33% believe it's going to be too expensive. And again, it's not just about the price, it's about, the value. So how do we tell them that the value is there, that the technology itself, while it appears quite expensive, the efficiencies gained are going to be really significant. 30% believe the fraud and security is going to be a challenge for them, and 30% almost just do not know where to start. I mean, this is right from the get-go. I'm not quite sure what I need to do to get my business to go in this direction. So work from anywhere. We talked about that. I mean, that becomes a trend. We're all, I'm assuming, seems like, except for me, I'm in the office, and I'll tell you the reason why I'm in the office today. Everybody's at home. So we're definitely embracing this idea. So how do we help small business owners with that transition? A lot of them are looking for help on that perspective. So very quickly, this was how they're feeling, what they're needing from big brands, what do they need to focus on in 2021 and beyond. But as we started to delve into the details, especially into, well, is there a difference between how younger businesses are sort of reacting to this versus older businesses, smaller versus larger? The one thing that we start to identify is this class called the COVID class. And the reason why we call it the COVID class is that businesses that either have started their business during COVID, or have basically, what we say, built the bones of their business during the pandemic, so during 2020. So the one aspect that we saw a lot, and there was a lot of discussion about in 2020 was, well, we wonder whether this pandemic is going to destroy SMEs as we know it. And I think everybody's very well aware that 99% of all businesses in Canada are small or medium-sized businesses. So the question was, is that percentage going to change? The reality is, and this is what I love about this audience, is that not only did they protect the 99%, in fact, there was significant growth in the number of startups. So in 2020, compared to 2019, there were 80,000 more new small business startups. This happened in months of May and onward. So March and April, of course, were definitely depressed. We saw a significantly lower number of starts, but very quickly, even in May, which is fascinating to me, is all of a sudden these new business starts starting to come up. So not only are existing businesses pivoting and figuring out how do I make things in a different way, this is now a completely new breed of individuals who, in my opinion, are braver than anyone else to say, I'm going to take a chance to build something in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. And now, again, we know that a lot of people were furloughed, that there was a tremendous amount of individuals that even lost their jobs, and sometimes you don't have a choice. But really, in that sense of uncertainty, it takes a particular type of individual to actually say, I'm going to start a business. So 80,000 more. And the other statistic that also shows simply growth of this particular market is that SMEs with 20 employees or less contributed nearly 550,000 jobs to the Canadian economy in 2020. This is between months of March and December, versus, to give you an example, enterprise organizations, large companies, contributed only 27,000. So the idea is that the COVID class is all of a sudden, we see this as a newly emerging class of individuals and small business owners. But the most importantly is, how different are they? So when we really start to look into the data, I thought, well, how are they different? How are they behaving differently? So the first thing that, of course, came to mind, which is probably not surprising, is that they were more positively impacted. So, for instance, 49% versus 31% across the board. But when they looked at the future, their future outlook was the same with everyone else. So it almost felt like they grabbed the opportunity to build their business, but now looking at the future, they're sort of saying, yeah, I'm not really 100% sure how it's going to go, but I've definitely taken the risk to actually start something in a very uncertain time. They felt better supported by landlords, suppliers, federal and provincial governments. So I think that could be a little bit of that resurgence of what we saw of Startup Canada's, for example, really started to focus on those up and coming businesses versus more established businesses. Majority of them want to sell online. So 50% versus 31%. More of them want to work from anywhere. So they believe in distributed workforces. They believe in that flexibility as the future. Less of them noted that adapting to change was number one lesson learned. So if we looked across the board, when we asked everyone, what was the number one lesson learned? They said that adapting to change was. So that's interesting because COVID class has essentially built a business in tremendous amount of change. So when we think about agile models, agility in the business, focus in the business organization, they built it during that time. So all of a sudden that becomes the norm for them versus something that they have to get used to. But more noted that adapting new technology was the number one lesson learned. So again, it goes back to really understanding that even though technology was at the core of what they were doing, technology is going to become the future for them even going forward. And the last point, I think if for me, this is exciting because this is what we all do in the sales and marketing realm, is that more of them noted difficulty in managing sales and marketing and customer experience than the overall scale. So it's interesting in that perhaps, and this is, again, we can delve into hours upon hours, and we will obviously dig deeper into this, but at the surface, it appears that they are trying to figure out how to essentially engage, how to convert, how to retain customers in this digital virtual world, whereas perhaps more established businesses still believe they can do it in the ways that they've done it before. But the reality is how we go after them, how do we want to engage them as our customers, is going to change simply based on that one last point. So if we were to summarize the traits of this COVID class, who are they? Well, I think there's really 6 areas that we identified based on our research. So number one, they're tech savvy. I mean, technology is at the core of what they do. 100% without a doubt, this is the technology is not a nice to have for them. It is a core of what they do. It's a core of their business, and it's a must have. They've built their business in an era of tremendous amount of change, tremendous amount of uncertainty. So agility became one of the main areas of focus for them of how to build their business. They are online. Everything is virtual. They are building businesses that are touchless. They're looking at ways to obviously drive that commerce activity without need for a old style, let's call it cash world. So therefore they're cashless. They're looking at ways of how do we make sure that we're remaining in this realm of no touch economy. And then of course they're driven by mobile technology. So again, looking at how are they different, these would be the 6 areas that we would say that if we as big brand marketers have to get to them, these are going to be the areas we have to kind of keep in mind. So hopefully that kind of gives you a quick sense of just a little bit to set us up for the conversation, a little bit of this sort of what we found in our research of who the sort of COVID class is. Any questions before we kind of get into the conversation on anything that you've seen, anything that shocked you, anything you think this is crazy, we have not seen anything like this before, anything at all?
No questions, no.
Yeah, nothing from me. However, could I get a copy of that report if possible? Can you put it in the chat? I figure it might be important.
Of course. I'm gonna send you not only that, Dave, but I'm gonna send you the full study. So it's significant, a lot more data in it. There's tremendous amount of data, so you can get really kind of behind a lot of different ways if you want to know, hey, how are smaller and older businesses reacting to this and things like that. So you're gonna get full study of that for sure.
I'd love. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. All right, so maybe we'll start here. So in a lot of conversations with a lot of brand partners, other clients or other partners, many said, we have seen the numbers that you're talking about. We have seen an increase to what we didn't think our organizations are going to see in terms of new businesses walking or getting into the Canadian economy. So the 80,000 that we saw in that chart. So have your organization seen sort of that demand increase from newly formed businesses such as these in the last, and let's say that it's the last 18 months?
I can answer, at least from my point of view, as absolutely we've seen it. It's become a key aspect of the growth for OVH Cloud in Canada. And it's exactly that, is that I need to get online and I need to have a website, I need to have e-commerce, and I need the infrastructure and the tools to build it. And it's companies that are either offering technical solutions overwhelmingly and doing e-commerce to sell it. And we've seen an absolute giant uptake in small, medium, in particular in the technology sector. Less so in healthcare, but overwhelmingly in companies that are developing technological solutions for other companies or for people. And it's become, I think, perhaps the biggest area where we've grown. The e-commerce side also is for a lot of agencies that want to build sites for other people. So we've seen that engagement of saying we need to be able to spin up a site, spin up a business, have the tools to do it as quickly as possible. And the thing that we've seen is the extremely quick adoption of new technologies from the infrastructure and from the platform side to enable these SaaS solutions wherever they are. So if it's there, people will try it. They want to get on board as fast as they can, and time is of the essence.
Okay, no, that's great. And are you seeing this growth? Are these newly formed businesses, or are you also seeing existing businesses trying to find ways to become more efficient in the world we live in today?
It's a mix of both from what our customer base is. And the ones that are our existing customers that have been around for a while, COVID essentially was the accelerator. It was the reason why people had to. And I think we've all seen this, but COVID made that jump happen. Instead of it happening in 2 years, it happened in a matter of months. But it also showed a lot of smaller companies to jump on the wagon. It's like, I can put up my space on the web and have my business, and my business could be global immediately. It doesn't, even if I'm a small business, we saw companies that offer different types of services, and they'll offer it globally, but it's like you said, less than 20 people, and very often there are less than 10 people. So we saw the catalyst for existing businesses, and that pushed smaller ones to say, you know what, I'm going to do it too. It was a Me Too moment for not that exactly thing, but you know what I mean? But it was like, yeah, I could do this too. And I can get in and grow my business. And a lot of people were also caught in the, I either got laid off because of COVID, or I had time to think about my business and what do I want to do, and I want to engage as quickly as I can.
Right. Okay, that's great. Thank you, John. Sarah, Dave, have you observed the same type of behavior in your organizations?
I can speak to that a little bit. I was going to let Sarah go because I'm just thinking what SAP Concur does. I imagine you've seen a ton of smaller businesses that are just getting formed looking for solutions. I mean, I'll go quickly. From my perspective, we typically see organizations looking for our services post acquiring or procuring benefits, right? It's a natural, cycle in terms of, you have benefits, but you want to make sure that the benefits that you're delivering and the solutions you're giving from an HCM or human capital perspective are actually complementing the type of workforce or organization you want to build. So from that perspective, we're seeing not less demand, but we haven't seen necessarily new businesses that have just been formed. First priority being human capital solutions. That being said, we're seeing a ton of demand from some of the larger, more enterprise organizations, or even some of the mid-market SMEs who now fully recognize that maybe not work from anywhere, but certainly hybrid work, and needing to adapt their HR and HCM strategies to fit, in my opinion, what is a reality, less of a decision. So yes, we're seeing a ton of demand, but not necessarily from newly formed businesses. So Sarah, apologies. That was a really long-winded way of giving you the mic, but I just wanted to jump in there.
No, absolutely agree with you. I was going to say the same type of thing when you first phrased the question, Mickey, around new businesses. I thought, the reinvention of businesses to me is where we've seen a big focus on organizations trying to future-proof their, and be able to pick up their business and move to 100% online if necessary. In terms of what we do, managing all their operational spend in the cloud is more appealing than ever, especially around like the cost containment side of things. Less so right now on the travel expenses, but how do we manage all of our spend and ensure that, we have auditing in place and things of that nature.
Okay, great. So it almost sounds like, and by the way, what you just said is brilliant in that, because that's been sort of coming through in a lot of our discussions internally, is that while we've identified these commonalities in Kolbe class, is that truly now not only for these new businesses that were formed, but is this going to become almost the norm for anybody, right? It isn't going to be a nice to have anymore. It's not going to be, well, I probably should. And I think, John, you said it accelerated everything, right? It got us to where we need to be much, much quicker. So I think that's a really interesting observation. And just out of curiosity, across your organizations, how do you define small, and how do you define medium-sized business? Is it by employee size, or is it by revenue size, or a combination of both? So Sarah, maybe
it's by head count, typical kind of strat. And I'm assuming for SAP Concur, it's probably similar. No, I don't want to jump in there, but certainly it's by head count. So how many folks will be using our solutions across the business?
Okay, and David, is that 100 and less is small, and 100 to 500 is medium, or how do you define that?
We actually, you called it out. So 100 and less is small, and then above 1,000 would be enterprise, and then in between is our mid-market segment. Okay,
got it, perfect. And Sarah, how about you guys at SAP Concur?
Yeah, so for our new business segments, we do go by headcount as well, same structure. When they move over to our client portfolio, then we're looking at the investment they've made in the SAP Concur products and looking at that ARR value and how we support the clients individually.
Okay. And John, on your end?
It's a mix, actually. And the reason why it's a mix is that we've had small companies explode in value. So they're suddenly generating a ton of money really, really quickly. A lot of them actually are companies that do streaming and hosting. We've seen streaming companies pop up all over the place to host different kinds of services that you might have seen, like on TikTok or anything, a lot of live streaming. So they could be under 20 people, but all of a sudden they've just exploded in terms of revenue. So in some cases it is headcount, in other cases it is revenue. It all depends on what area they're in.
Okay. And are you seeing different behaviors of those groups? So like if you were to, and again, I'm not talking about specifically marketing type personas, but even how do they behave, during their buyer journey? How do they buy from you in those separate groups?
At least on our side, what I can say with terms of buying, the smaller or the less mature the company, the more impulsive they've been, because they're reacting to quick changes, very fast changes, and they haven't always thought of what am I going to do 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the road. They're really just catching up with their own growth. The more mature organizations are trying to plan out their different strategies, either with regard to data management or network management. And when I'm talking about data management, suddenly you'll get like a medium-sized company that says, wow, we've got all this great, insightful data. What are we going to do with it? That kind of strategy of we're going to use AI, how are we going to store this? What are we going to do to take advantage of all this? Is they're suddenly stopping and saying, oh, wait a minute, we need to think about this. So the medium and more established businesses a little bit slower, but I would say more deliberate. And the small ones we've seen are like, wow, I've got to catch up with this growth. And they'll jump to the simplest, fastest solution to keep on growing and make sure that they stay afloat more than anything. Okay,
great. Great. David, how about on your side? Are you seeing very different behaviors between these individual groups, sub 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 above?
Yeah, I think, I completely agree with John that the smaller organizations make decisions more quickly. I think that's natural when you're, selling to a larger organization. Obviously, there's more stakeholders. You have to get buy-in from a bunch of different teams. It's a different type of sale. That being said, I have noticed, at least as it relates to HCM, in terms of like HR decisions, what policies are going to be in place. Is it work from anywhere? Is it hybrid workplace? I think it was around January where there was a big shift where folks started to, I think, tell themselves, okay, this isn't just going to be a snapback. We might be in this situation for a while. Not only that, I think the power dynamic changed a little bit when folks started to realize that individuals had choices, whether it was starting a new business for themselves, the kind of Shopify coin side hustle, which we've heard the Globe talk about a ton over the past year, or just opportunities at organizations that, I'm sure Sarah and John both support, that were doing really, really well. So what I've noticed is that, within that power dynamic shift, there's a recognition that, at least on the HR side, it's not just how I want to necessarily run a business in a vacuum. It's like, who are the other stakeholders? Who is really making decisions here? And how can I make sure that, I'm applying the best policies and the best kind of consistent future state for employees, which has really led to organizations looking for what I'd call complementary hybrid work solutions, right? So at the beginning it was telehealth, and then you start to roll that ball down the hill, and it becomes obvious that a really smart way of managing benefits costs, given in Canada 80% of those costs are drugs, is having some sort of virtual pharmacy partner that can deliver to my folks at home. So I do think it's changed, but in our space specifically, there was like a moment where it all changed at once when that recognition became apparent for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, I want to echo that, and we saw it as well. So the work from home forced all of these organizations, small, medium, large, didn't really matter. I have to engage this because I need to survive, right? I have to keep on going. We realize this is not a short thing. This is going to be a longer term issue. And all of a sudden, it just shifted the way companies had to work, regardless of the size. And then suddenly being at home, it's kind of that, that being at home opened up a lot of people's eyes to, well, what can I do?
Yeah, I can actually get work done. Things are going all right. Yeah.
So true. Yeah. So yeah, we had the same kind of realization with suddenly who are like as you said, the decision makers. And we also saw how, at least with, just about any size of company, is that employees had much more power. So it was an interesting change for us to see, like, we need this piece of software, we need that piece of infrastructure, we need this, or we need whatever the case we need. And it had to be delivered digitally really, really quickly. And that was the imperative for everyone.
Yeah. And I feel like it's kind of interesting. You can map it out. I sometimes joke with my spouse about this, that, at first you had organizations like, I'll call the most new large cap tech companies. So like Uber, Okta, a few other organizations saying, yeah, we're work from anywhere, like moving forward, period. We were trying to get here anyways. Then you had the large FANG companies saying, oh, no, we're going to go back to the office. If anyone's been kind of paying attention to some of their communications over the past 3-4 months, they've kind of gone, I'm actually interested, Sarah, to hear what SAP has said on this. They've kind of gone back and forth to the point where the attrition was so poor from their workforce that they've had to say, look, you can talk to your manager, but likely you can work from anywhere. And then also, and I have to applaud the Sun Lifes and PwCs of the world, et cetera, because it seems like they've been noticing the same thing. So I don't know, from my perspective, I don't know if it's an observation anymore. Like when you have, Sun Life and PwC, some of the biggest, most traditional employers in the country saying, we're going to let folks work from anywhere. It's a reality that I think every organization competing for the same talent, which of course they are, needs to recognize and adapt to fit. So anyways, I'll pause. Sarah, I'm interested to hear.
Yeah,
I'd like to know
yeah.
Yeah, we started, kind of at the beginning of everything. They came out with Pledge to Flex at SAP, and that's been the motto ever since. So it's definitely a new environment in terms of flexibility work environment, specifically for our business. And I'd say the businesses that we work with are very similar. I think the individuals that we're selling to now and the departments that we're selling to have evolved. I mean, there are now we used to work with the finance teams ultimately, and now there are these new connected systems owners in the IT departments because they have so many online systems that they're now acquiring, needing to work together. And there are these new roles that have developed, new departments that have developed, all because of this, that we now need to learn, understand who they are and how to work with them differently. So I think that's how our selling strategy has differed over the past little bit. And I think that's just going to be the wave of the next group of individuals that we're involved in selling to.
Really interesting.
So Sarah, would you say that there's almost this rise of the influencer now in the purchase process?
Yeah, I would say I have a number of organizations who have also hired advisors to come in and say, what could I be digitizing? What could I be taking online? How do I make this, current managing or manual process more efficient and available for my end users online? So instead of doing the research themselves, I know there are a number of advisor organizations out there that are doing the research for the businesses. So it's something that people are investing in to see how quickly they can kind of package up their business and put it online.
For sure. And you know what, we always said that in this market, peer was always very important, right? So particularly when we think very small businesses, business owners will ask other business owners, what do you think? I'm trying to buy XYZ. What do you think where I should go? And that sort of starts to really kind of creep in and around where small business owners no longer necessarily personally involved in the purchase decision. But the one thing, that's the reason why I asked that, because something John brought up as well, is that we're seeing that there is this tremendous power in what the employees are asking for, how the employees are actually saying, hey, you should consider this. And I'll give you a great example, Sarah, and this is from my previous life. I used to work for Mercedes-Benz, and we did not have a really, really good system for expenses. And everybody complained that it was very manual. And then somebody brought up SAP Concur and said, I think we really need a system. And there was this, what I would say, revolution in the office of everybody who traveled a lot. And all of a sudden, everything went to the head of IT, who was responsible for purchasing basically pretty much any, let's call it process-driven system. And it was procured. So, and I think we're seeing that even at a very small business level, is that because the small business owner has to wear so many hats, they can't really keep up with changes in technologies, particularly that's moving so quickly. So I think that if we not only focus and target small business owners, that we start to target really those users of the service that we're about to push through, I think that to me is a really, really nice way of thinking about, is there an opportunity out there? And especially now, because technology, unfortunately, is hard to understand for a lot of people. In fact, I was just moderating a panel yesterday at the Canadian SME Summit, and the conversation was, can we even simplify what cloud technology is for a lot of small business owners? They don't know what that is. It's this scary word, cloud. Oh my God, it's going into the cloud. What's happening to my data? What's happening to my business? And so I think there is a lot of that focus on those that understand technology can actually help guide the purchase process along. So,
yeah, Mickey, I agree with that about cloud. I mean, being on the infrastructure side and the platform side, it is a big mystery to a lot of people. And I remember the job that I took, my mom said, so what's the cloud? Is it like really a cloud? And she's mystified, and people I know who are pretty savvy technically, still don't understand, what am I doing? How is this working? And they do feel overwhelmed. And some of them actually say, well, I feel dumb, I don't know. No, it's really complicated. It's not as simple as we like to make it out to be. And for small business owners in particular, you're going to have to make so many choices so quickly. How do you know what you need? And that's a tough one. And that's where I think in terms of marketing, it's getting to understand what their pain points are and saying, yeah, this is what you need to be successful going forward. And not saying you need to buy a whole package. Here's what you need for this particular phase of your growth, and being quite selective, I think.
Right.
This
right.
use case almost.
Very much agreed.
Yeah. No, and on your point, just to highlight just something interesting about, that experience at Mercedes, and there's this concept today of product-led growth. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but you don't necessarily sell top down. You go try and acquire users. You create gating to your product or your service where you give them some value for free. You don't charge them. But then as they start to use it more and more, that kind of bubbles up to the surface, and you then have some really good data points to go sell to their procurement team or anyone else across the business with real relevant data of the folks on their teams who have been using it. So I would say like the grand example of that, in my opinion, is like Slack, where engineering teams sort of use it right away. But I think it also can be useful within the SMB or mid-market, depending on what product or service you're selling. So I think it's a really relevant point, because the companies that we're seeing that are exploding from small business to massive companies, they almost have a gimmick within their sales strategy that just enables people to touch it, feel it, use it, and then ultimately it proliferates through an organization if folks like it and it handles their use case. So sorry to circle back, because I thought John made a great point as well, but I just wanted to cover that also. Yeah,
I agree. The product-led growth, absolutely.
But I think, David, I think you brought up a really good point, is that, and this is often the unfortunate thing in the industries that, maybe we all represent, is that marketing oftentimes ends up being quite boring, that there isn't a lot of, let's say, life and emotion behind it. And I think that everything, all your organizations do is so critically important, and emotion behind purchasing in B2B is sometimes even far more than B2C marketing. So we often talk about B2B doesn't mean business, because sometimes people will say it stands for business to boring. Well, I say it stands for business to beautiful. And really, at the end of the day, it's human to human, right? We are, an organization doesn't sell to an organization. An individual sells to another individual. Yes, they're part of organizations, but the emotional aspect is really quite strong there. So
completely agree.
And with that, I know that we are at 3:15, which is our scheduled time. I personally can go a little bit longer if you guys have any more questions. Totally fine if everybody has to drop off. So I'm going to leave that up to you.
I do actually have a question for Sarah. And it's kind of, I guess it's more on the German team. Sarah, I used to work at SAP back in the mothership back in Germany a long time ago, when it was still R3 and all those on-premise things. I moved here I'm in Montreal currently, and I was a director of operations here and left in 2014. But one of the things that I always wondered about, and I see this, is how do you market to small businesses so that they feel like you're talking to me, not, oh my God, it's another big one, it's impersonal and whatnot. And I asked that from the point of view of, as the company that I'm at currently was founded by an immigrant who moved to France and really does understand the one-to-one, but they're struggling with the enterprise. So, I mean, I'm starting to see how well they did the small, medium marketing and being very personal and direct, but the other way around. So I'm just curious from your point of view.
That's a good question. Concur was an acquisition for SAP. So I worked for Concur prior to the acquisition with SAP, and we were small business driven. We did have an enterprise side, but I always worked in the SMB side. And one of the main reasons for the acquisition was due to SAP looking to support down market more. And so learning from our sales motion and having our entire SMB sales group that was acquired with them, I think has helped them understand a little bit more and how to sell, and not having necessarily to go through third parties, et cetera. But I don't think the mentality has changed internally at SAP Concur. For those of who have been here the entire time, it hasn't been a shift in terms of how we go to market and go to business. But for our clients, it has been just with the name itself, seeing SAP, can you work with smaller organizations? Do you understand our struggles and our needs? And I think that's where our grounded organization as Concur growing up and being able to, we started like that too. And we saw, more recently than an enterprise like SAP has seen what a small organization is comprised of and what's important to those organizations. So we have, a huge SMB focus and a large team that just supports SMB. So for this cloud arm of SAP Concur, I'd say it's not necessarily new for us, but I know for SAP in general, it's something that they're very interested to see how we run our business.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And John, remind me, SAP was where in Germany? Which city?
It's just outside of Heidelberg. So it's southwest Germany, about 20 minutes southwest of Heidelberg. So lovely, lovely part of Germany. Really, really great.
And how many years were you there?
In total, I was there about 8 years. So it was a really great learning ground for me. I loved working there. It was a lot of fun. Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You still speak German, I assume?
I do. I was a translator when I started. So
Okay.
in a lifetime ago. We were talking about previous lifetimes. That was a lifetime ago.
That's amazing. Very cool. Very cool. Wonderful. So maybe I would just love to close with one thing, if everybody has just maybe a minute, and it's maybe just a quick statement. I personally believe that this is, and we've seen this across not only the COVID class, the newly generated businesses. For them, this is absolutely critical. But what we've also seen that this is becoming a lot more important. And Sarah, you brought up the point about asking, Concur was a very different organization when purchased by SAP. And the question was, dear SAP, do you really understand this audience? This audience is not like your other enterprise accounts. And so the point about purpose-driven business. So we're not talking about CSR initiatives. We're saying, why do you exist as a company? And what does that mean to a small business owner? So I just wanted to kind of quickly get your take on purpose-driven, purely from a marketing perspective. Do you believe in it? Is that something the organization is doing? And do you think there's value? And by the way, I'll tell you one thing, it's highly valued by the SMB community, especially small business. So I just kind of wanted to get that take. And Sarah, if we can just start with you on that point.
Yeah, I love this question. And I love the concept of purpose-driven businesses and what that means. I don't think it's reserved for the not-for-profits or the social enterprises. And now it's a way that a lot of large, successful organizations are created and operate. And I really think the true tell sign of how you can see that's evolving is from the types of new roles and departments that have been developed in organizations. Like most recently, people now have chief customer officers, client success managers. Those roles were created to help businesses deliver on their promise to be customer centric. And they were never there before. So I think that's a perfect example. But I think it's a really interesting concept that now larger organizations are considered more purpose-driven, when in the past they probably wouldn't have been put in that category.
Yeah,
Sarah, I couldn't agree with you more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No. You go.
Sarah, I couldn't agree with you more about those new roles that are created because, especially with the underlying, it's technology. No, it's not. It's the person using it. Whoever that is, whether they're an end user or somewhere along the way, having that focus on the customer is really what it's all about. I think one of the things that the cloud world is guilty of is, wow, here's the coolest, latest server, data, whatever. No. What is the purpose of your business, Mr. Consumer, Mr. Customer, that we can help you with? And I think there's that big shift. I completely agree with what you said. And sorry, go ahead, David, excuse me.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you went first, because I part of what you said, I think is like selling and leading with empathy. So what can you do? What is the result for a customer, or even as an organization? Like, what is the benefit to an employee? What can they get behind in terms of your mission? And how are you helping society? I think it makes a lot of sense. We just went through this like cataclysmic 2 years where everything was turned upside down. And I do think, it might sound a little bit altruistic, but I think people have kind of been shook a little bit and want to do things that they feel benefit society, are important and align with their values. And I think that also shines through in terms of what people want to buy and who they want to buy from. So even if, someone, organization XYZ was selling, denim, it doesn't really matter. There's a way to craft your mission and your vision and your values to, what customers want to hear and who they want to buy from, and also align those internal, your internal or one's internal culture with where folks and who folks want to work for. So I think it's similar to our conversation around talent and organizations having to kind of move and change relative to what demand is from a talent perspective. I think the market has really spoken, and the world has seemingly gotten a lot more caring about who they buy from and what the goal of an organization that they use their products is. So I think it's a good thing, and I notice it as well. So sort of be long-winded, but I also loved this question.
Yeah. And David, I just saw a stat yesterday, the day before, about the Gen Z. I think it's definitely Gen Z, or I'm not sure it's millennials, but that 60% of them are now shopping in thrift stores as opposed to buying stuff from fast fashion. And it's about, for them, what am I doing to contribute? They're online all the time. They're very global citizens in a way. So they see, what can I do to help, or what can I not do to make things better? They're much more aware than my generation ever was.
Completely. And there's platforms, like multi-billion-dollar platforms, where people are buying secondhand items. Like it's true in a lot of categories. It's amazing. It's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I hope it continues, and I think it will.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
No, that's great, and thank you for all that you said. And David, I like when you started to touch on the point about talent. Well, I'm sure that if anyone has been trying to find talent in the last 6 months, it is extremely challenging to find individuals that want to be part of organizations. And I think that if there is this really clear idea of what are we here to do, that is going to be the winning game in getting the people to really say, I want to be part of this organization. And I think that, to me, is going to be that powerful element. And again, it goes beyond just, hey, we believe that we're supporting this charity. It's not about that. It's about, why are we here as a business? And there's this tremendous push to great talent to really identify with the purpose. But the second thing is, and again, something, David, you mentioned, is that what I love about is that there's this been almost in the last probably 8 to 10 months, this sort of wake up call to say, well, hang on a second. Yes, I know I can buy this on Amazon and it's easy. I get it. But I don't think I want to buy from Amazon. I'd rather do this, and I'd rather maybe go through a little bit of a harder time to go get it, to be able to support that. And those small businesses that are now figuring out ways that it's easy to buy from them are now going to win the game, because as consumers, we're saying, well, hang on a second, I'm getting pretty much 75% of the efficiency of buying from Amazon by buying from a small business. That, to me, is all I need to know.
And supporting my community. Yeah. And I noticed that with restaurants quite a bit. Like everyone in our neighborhood, I think I'm in Toronto, across the city has kind of pushed back on certain platforms. There's a few of them where, maybe it's not the best deal for a specific restaurateur, and going out of their way to support like some of the local businesses, which I completely agree. It's a little bit more friction, a little bit more pain, but it's a better feeling for everyone after the transaction is done. So I agree.
Absolutely. It just feels that much better. And I think that's the point that, honestly, and we can use that to sort of conclude the chat. But when we think about COVID class, on top of those 6 elements that we talked about, are what makes them the businesses that they are 100% driven by purpose. And so we're seeing that even how they were using other, so when there was a supply chain problem, earlier in mid 2020, and even now in early 2021, they were leaning on their small business owner, let's say, partners in their communities to sort of recreate this controlled supply chain by leaning on each other. So really kind of pushing that sense of, I want to support you because I believe in what you're doing. And so we're just seeing that purpose kind of coming through. And that's the one thing that we always say to big brands, make sure that you have that very clear, because if you don't, they're not really going to be certain whether they want to be an organization that they want to deal with. So I think it's definitely one of the things that's not going to go away. Sarah, to your point, there are leadership roles being created now to really start to define what that means for organizations. And personally, I think that's a good thing. So I think it'll be a pretty bright future. So.
Great.
All right.
I'm sorry I have to jump but thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, great meeting you, Sarah. Great meeting you, John.
Nice
and thanks so much, Mickey.
Nice
really appreciate
including
me in this conversation.
Yeah, appreciate it as well.
No problem at all. It was a great conversation.
I'm
sure we could probably talk much longer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to follow up, send you guys an email with the study. Plenty of details there, and would love to carry on the conversation in the future.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks,
Perfect.
folks. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.